Hello, and welcome back to the Delve podcast. I'm Allie. I'm a staff therapist here at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
And I'm Adam. I'm the executive and clinical director at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago.
Help us spread the word with this podcast. We're not trying for fame here. We don't plan to run any ads. It's going to be very listener friendly. We're just trying to add value and be helpful to as many people as possible. So if you like this podcast, we ask that you share it with at least one other person. It'd be really helpful for us. We at Delve offer individual, couples, group, and family therapy. So if you're interested in booking a free consultation call, head on over to delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. And if you can't get enough of our podcast, we have amazing topics over on our blog at delvepsych.substack.com.
Thank you so much, Allie. And I am sorry you're maybe not feeling the best today. So it's just a warning to the listener that I think Allie's got the stuffy nose.
A little bit. If you could hear the congestion, I'm so sorry. I'm going to try my best to not sniffle throughout this episode.
And one, thank you so much for showing up regardless. And two, we can normalize that you don't have to apologize for having a need.
You know what? You're right, Adam. I should practice what I preached a little bit.
I'm grateful to spend this time with you.
Yes, you as well. Okay, for today's episode, I had the idea of talking more in depth about the emotion anger. I feel like anger gets a bad rap. I feel like we're taught, many of us in society, at least in Western culture, are like taught to not express anger. It's bad if you feel it. So a lot of my clients will be like, okay, so like I feel angry. Like, how do I not feel this way? Like, this is bad. Or they're even taught like they're not taught how to feel or process or express their anger in a healthy way. So maybe they start to express anger in not so healthy ways. And there's no sort of like middle ground with it. It's either stuff it and never feel it, or it's like we're getting in fights with people. And
Yeah.
So I think this could be a really helpful topic for many people.
I think so as well. And I really appreciated you bringing it up. I also suspect, maybe this gets a little personal, I'm not sure, you can wave me off if so, but I would suspect that you and I have probably had very different experiences of anger in our childhood and the expectations placed on each of us about anger, how we show it, when we show it, where it goes, what it's for, etc. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I think from a female perspective that especially women are taught like, no, you just need to be like, you need to go with the flow, be polite, don't speak up when something's upsetting you. If you do express anger, then you're the bitch, right? And so I think a lot of women especially are really unfamiliar with what to do with anger, and basically taught to like not be angry. So that's my experience with it.
Absolutely. And I think alternatively, I think a lot of men experience some of the social shame around sadness emotions. And we try to claim that that's not going to happen or not going to happen as much any longer. But I certainly know when I was a child, it was so common to hear things like, you know, is anything broken? No. Are you bleeding? No. Then quit crying, like that kind of stuff. Um, and if that's the case for sadness, what of all of the other emotions? There's not room to explore, I'm embarrassed, I'm feeling shame, I'm feeling guilt as those emotions start to develop in childhood. So how does it come out of you? It comes out of you in terms of anger. And anger is very much sort of a desperate attempt on some level to regain some degree of control over your environment. And I think my guess is that one of two things happens to men when they express anger now. Either they are labeled as toxic and shunted for it, or far more often, it's apologized for. It's just sort of accepted.
Right.
I see this on the soccer pitch all the time. Guy has meltdown. Everyone says, he'll calm down.
Right. It's interesting. Yeah, I like to watch hockey, and they just go at it right on the ice rink. They're getting fist fights.
Well, that's a good point as well, right? Like then it's championed, right? Then it's sort of like you are more man if you are aggressive, which of course
Right.
we should distinguish between aggression and anger for sure. But
Right. Or aggression and assertiveness, or, like, yeah, I think often sometimes I feel like maybe I in session don't give anger its due time with clients, because I feel like I tend to be like, okay, yeah, you're angry. What's beneath that anger? Like, what's the primary emotion we're dealing with here under the anger? Because usually there's something underneath it. But I think anger in and of itself can be trying to tell you something. Like, I think, it could be a good indicator of like, okay, whoa, I have a boundary there. That I didn't realize that I had in this area, and I'm feeling angry about it. And that's what the anger is trying to tell you. Or like, I think about ways that anger can be a good thing to experience. Like, every instance, if we look back in the history of our country, like any instance of social change, any sort of movement, like someone was angry. Someone had to start being like pissed off about this thing. Like, this is an injustice. This is not right. I'm feeling angry about it. And I'm going to use that anger to fuel me, to motivate me into protesting and marching and some sort of change. Like, without that feeling of anger in the first place, like, many of these milestones in our history, like, would not have happened.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's an exceptionally powerful tool, as you indicate, right? It can be the source of great camaraderie, and the if we can be angry about the same thing, then we can form a group and try to do something about it.
Right.
Though that is a power for good and for evil, right? And the same mechanism works to create some of the ill effects in our society. But
Right.
there's no question that indignation and anger can lead to organization, and organization certainly can lead to change for good or worse. I think you're right to indicate that we do need a degree of anger in order to begin to push in some direction for some kind of change. And then I think, as you kind of highlighted previous, it's really important to begin to kind of shape that anger into something that can be effective.
Right. So I think that comes into the topic of discussion of like, okay, so we're feeling angry. We don't want to just like go out and get into a fist fight. So like, what do we do with it? How do we process the emotion of anger in a healthy way?
Well, let's add some nuance there, even because I could imagine in certain cultures the fist fight is the right answer.
Hmm.
I remember going to certain bars in rural America, and certain individuals appeared to show up at the bar with the sole intention of getting in a fight. Like they showed up, they ordered a drink, they sat down, and they started looking around with just that seething anger on their face. So, what are they doing? And why are they doing that? We could call that toxic. We could call that aggressive. We could call that all sorts of things. But chances are, even in those circumstances, they are trying to fulfill some identity somewhere along the way. And to who and for what? To some degree, for self, likely. But probably to some degree, it's going to be people like fathers, brothers, friends. It's the in group. And if the culture of whatever the in group or family is that has that kind of that expectation of toughness and grit, then you have to exercise that somehow to demonstrate that you're going alongside the cultural experience of the familial kind of expectations. You have to do something to be one of us. And so we're trying to accomplish that without much conscious awareness. And we could say, well, don't be that, but look at our history. Toughness pays, especially for men. It's aggressive acquisition of resources. Hell, we probably have some of the names that we have, you and I, because the Normans aggressively, invaded the British Isles, um, and and shaped history in those ways. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying we can understand. I'm probably saying it's bad, but
Yeah.
but nevertheless, like we can understand psychologically what people might be doing in trying to meet a moment in that way. We need resources, we need identity, we need connection, we need social cohesion, and that's more about my in group than it is about the betterment of all society.
Yeah. It probably, for that person in that society, it would feel very foreign for that male presenting person to like go and journal about his feelings of anger, like in some ways, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what you're saying is like in some ways, like a man in that society expressing his anger in that way with a fist fight sort of has some benefit to him because it like proves something to people.
Absolutely. I mean, I thinking about a lot of the fathers that are going to say, "Is anything broken? Is anything bleeding? Then quit crying." How are they going to respond when they pick you up from jail and you got a puffy eye and a broken knuckle? What does he say?
Yeah, good job, kid.
And or like, how's the other guy look?
Yeah. Or yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And
Like,
now we've bonded.
yeah.
I mean, a lot of us are just trying to connect with people and figure out where love comes from in whatever form we can find it.
Yeah. But like, what if that's not like, what if we're a male presenting person and we like realize, okay, yeah, maybe my dad is proud of me if I really beat the crap out of somebody else and I win, quote unquote, this fight. But I actually like, I'm realizing that's not how I want to be in the world. And that's not what I want to do.
My experience is that typically in cis het men, that shows up when their girlfriends or wives get mad at them and threaten to leave.
Ooh.
That's about the only time we get a guy like that in therapy. Their wife or girlfriend says, "You got to go talk to this guy." So
Yeah. So, okay. So that sort of client sits down in front of you is like, man, I have these struggles with anger. I don't know what to do with it. But my wife is like, hey, you're getting in too many fights. It's making me really uncomfortable. You need to get a hold on this or I'm leaving. So, how do you work through that with this client?
well, I think anyone who's got a clarity of purpose on what they're trying to accomplish in their life is um, honestly a terribly easy client to work with. If I know what they need, then all I'm doing is helping push them toward that. And so then
Yeah.
when they get angry, it's easy to redirect and sort of be like, it's not going to work with your spouse. And that's who you're doing this for. And there's such a prickling about this idea that somebody should like need love or organize their kind of world around love. But a lot of men do, one. And two, I think it's a relatively contemporary phenomenon to suggest that we shouldn't do that. Um, in Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl talks about the kind of commitment to another in that way. And historically, if you said something like, I'm going to commit myself to this person, I'm going to make sure that they are good, and if I have to sacrifice myself to make sure that they are safe, then I will. These days, we're like, well, that makes you weak and dependent, and that's toxic. And so it's like, fuck. um, I think having that clarity of purpose and being real about the fact that many people do organize themselves in that way, and that can be the impetus for change, isn't necessarily such a bad thing. But then I'm also going to add those other layers of, you also need to have some kind of um, personal accountability and management of your own emotions, because your caretaking for them cannot be a substitute for your caretaking for yourself. You need to do both.
Yeah, I like that caveat with it. Um, I think first and foremost, I think like what I might tell someone is like, I don't know, to feel compassion for the anger, I suppose, in a way of like I'm hurting right now. Like something's going on that's really hard for me, really upsetting. And that first and foremost. And then I wonder if there's ways in session that we can express that anger in like a safe way. I don't know if it's like screaming into a pillow or if it's like embodying it, clenching your fists, kind of like gritting your jaw and like, yeah, like let's like yell about it together in session. I don't know. Those are some of the ideas that I have.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad that you're bringing up the healthy expression of anger, and I want to get back to, as you brought up, kind of the gender difference here, because we talked about the male side. I think we should also talk about the typical experience that women have with anger, as well as how it interacts with trans identity. And my perception along the same lines as you mentioned with respect to women's expression of anger is that typically there is that social condemnation of anger, and as a result, well, frankly, there's kind of a social condemnation of most female emotionality, period. um, Large expressions of most emotions are going to cause problems somewhere, and that means that I think there's a fairly systemic suppression of most emotions for many women. Not everybody, but for many.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think on one hand it's like, oh, she's so emotional, she's not going to be able to lead or be the CEO of this company because like she cries and like, like we can't have someone who is emotional and uh, you know, is weak lead. But then like on the flip side, I think that like it's more acceptable for women um to cry and be sad and have those emotions than men.
I do think that's true, but there is so much context dependency on that. Um, so let's go dating and relationship, work, and friendships.
Okay.
Um, at work, you get tearful in the middle of a meeting. Is it not uncommon to hear something along the lines at some point of, hey, it's okay if you're upset, but you really can't be showing that in a meeting. We're trying to be professionals here. You can't let the client see you upset. Okay, so suppress that
Totally.
emotion.
Yeah.
Dating and relationship. Why the hell is this bothering you so much? This isn't a big deal. Quit, like, quit being so dramatic.
Yeah.
With friendships, depending on the culture of the friend group, if you have people, they might begin to just immediately try to solve your problems. You know what you should do is fill in the blank. Or they might also kind of minimize those problems, like, hey, you shouldn't be worried about this. That, um, there's there's no value in being upset about this thing. You just need to kind of like take care of yourself and I don't know, do yoga or whatever else, right?
Yeah.
Um, there are other friend groups that I think are more effective at this, but some aren't. Some are really not. And I don't think that the genderedness of the arrangement of the friend group necessarily defines whether it is healthy or not. Many of them are quite condemning of certain emotions. I don't know. You tell me, does that seem plausible?
Yeah, I think the work one for sure. I think relationships for sure. Um, and then I think with the friendships, I don't know. I sometimes I find female friendships to be very um emotionally vulnerable in between friends and like supportive of expressing those emotions. Um, I do think though sometimes like it can what I have heard is like, oh man, I've already come to my friends about this thing multiple times and now I feel like I'm being too much for them.
Yeah, yeah.
And so like I can't anymore. Like I don't want to be too much and uh I don't want to like bombard them with my emotions, which I think there's something to be said about like dumping, you know, and making sure we're not doing that. Um but like but yeah, I think sometimes people are worried that they're too much for their friends or maybe they're not fun enough for their friends because they're actually going through some hard stuff and maybe like they aren't the most positive person right now but they're worried that like oh man like if I'm not the life of the party tonight then like maybe these people won't want to hang out with me so I don't
I'm
know.
curious if so you're saying that there might be an internalized pressure to suppress your emotion. I
Yeah.
wonder if you perceive that there's ever an externalized pressure to suppress, where they say to you, like, hey, come on, we're just having a good time tonight, or oh, you're still stuck on that?
Yes, I think that could be true. I think that there definitely could be some friendships that where it's like oh man, like I don't want to deal with that. We're just having fun girls night. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But um but yeah, I find in general, like I wonder like from the male perspective, like how often do you like sit and have like emotional talks with your guy friends?
Well, I'm a bad example. I've got a ton of wonderful, vulnerable male friendships, and so, but I think that it's not common for most. I
Right.
think most people, most men, just don't talk about these things. They really don't, and they don't know how to talk about these things.
Yeah.
So they'll talk about the bears.
Right. Right. Um
Well, and I wanted to. I'm sorry. Did you have a?
no, 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 go ahead, go ahead.
I wanted to go back to this idea of what's underneath the anger as well.
Yeah.
And pardon me for getting a little academic here for just a second, but
Sure.
it's really common in psychotherapy talk for us to talk about anger as a secondary emotion, with primary emotions being much more things like shame, embarrassment, guilt, um, a feeling of isolation, a loneliness, um, confusion, etc. Those can be much more primary emotions. They're about me, not about the other person. And that is psychotherapy speak. Um, we should probably do a deeper dive on what emotions are at some point. It's probably going to need to be several podcast episodes because they're actually quite complicated. And the literature on how they develop and what they really are is fascinatingly complex.
Yeah.
Um, and long storied history of studying what emotions are. Um, but at least Lisa Barrett's more contemporary work suggests that that distinction doesn't really hold up. If you get academic about it, the distinction between primary and secondary emotions doesn't necessarily hold up. And there probably is a way to view anger as its own kind of primary emotion. Um, the reason why I think it's okay for us generally to kind of stick with that heuristic of anger as a secondary emotion is that regardless of what is totally true within humans in an academic, if you will, ontological sense, um, there's a distinction between what's really, really true and what's really happening versus what tends to happen. And what does tend to happen is the pattern of primary emotions get covered up by secondary emotions, which get expressed externally as blame or aggression or something of that nature. That's just a super common pattern. So we can talk about it in that way because it is just a very, very, very common pattern. But if we're being more academic about it, anger can be a primary emotion. It can be expressed in many different ways. And sometimes it is of benefit to target it as the sort of core thing to work on in a particular session, which I think is what you were intuiting and aiming for with the client situations you were bringing up previously.
Yeah. Well, something that also just popped into my mind too, that I think could be really actually maybe feeling and expressing some sort of anger could be healing is like perhaps like I'm working with a female presenting client and they just got out of a relationship that was perhaps like emotionally abusive or something like that. And maybe they're really sad about it. Maybe they blame themselves for even like staying in it. Maybe they just feel a lot of shame for everything and really have internalized everything about that relationship. It could actually be really healing in their process after the breakup to to muster up some sort of anger in them about how they were treated in
Yeah.
that relationship, because maybe they haven't even like let themselves feel that like, hey, this is not all on you, like you actually like were really mistreated. And maybe that could be something that could be actually like healing, to like write an angry letter, not to send it to that person, but like write
Yeah.
out your feelings of anger. uh yeah, I don't know, that's just what came to mind for me.
I think that's absolutely true. Yeah, my guidance typically for a breakup situation is as you feel whatever primary emotion, and anger can in this case be primary, uh, then you write about it, and you do write it to the other person, not with the intention to send. Typically, I find that there is a fondness, longing, loss letter and an angry letter.
Yeah.
And the fondness, longing, loss letter might be okay to send in some circumstances. I encourage talking to your therapist or very close, emotionally intelligent friends about it first. Um, uh, the angry letter that's not for them. It's not, it's for you, it's not for them. Um, I often find that people struggle to actually sit with and hang on to some of those emotions. If somebody trends toward self blame, self condemnation, accessing the anger might be quite difficult, again, as you were kind of indicating in certain sessions. So, helping them in a session to access the externalization can be really very powerful. And we sort of want to do both parts, right? What are you going to miss? And what are you not going to miss? And really sort of breaking those into two separate processes.
Yeah. And that anger for how you realize that you were treated in the relationship can really be good fuel in the next relationship, to know like what I don't want and what I won't, accept anymore, and those sorts of things. Um you wanted to distinguish between anger and aggression. I think that's really important. So how would you define the difference between anger and aggression?
Primarily, the anger is the emotion itself, and the aggression is the behavioral output of that emotion.
Okay.
And not all expressions, it tends to be the case, by the way, that catharsis, the idea of just sort of outputting the anger, doesn't actually help. Um, you tend to just make yourself more angry and more prone to expressing the anger. Um, but having space for it, some permission to experience it, and some thoughtful, planful way of engaging your own anger is a useful process. And I encourage working through that with a therapist, because there are many ways that you can relate to any emotion. But if you can identify the emotion, label it, understand it, which is really complicated. It's one of the most complicated parts of Lisa Barrett's book, and probably the most complicated didactic I offer in the entire year. The emotion concepts one, we'll get into it sometime, but really understand its complexity and its nuance. Then you can begin to relate to it. And sometimes you go into it, sometimes you pull away from it, sometimes you allow it to take up more space in your life, sometimes you do sort of push back against it. But that can look a lot of different ways for certain individuals. And really, like, building that nuance into your emotion process is a lot of the work of therapy.
Yeah. It's very complicated, but just for our listeners, like, to kind of break it down a little bit, I wonder if it's like what you're talking about is more like being intentional with how we're interacting with anger versus like being like reactionary with it and just letting the anger just like take over us. And next thing we know, we're in a bar fight and we didn't intend to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the difference between reacting to an emotion and responding to an emotion is that reacting to an emotion is thoughtless, impulsive, fast, and it's typically guided toward clinging to a pleasant emotion or getting rid of an unpleasant emotion. Versus responding to an emotion allows the emotion to exist. It doesn't necessarily try to change or move it or cling to it. But then the behavioral choice, the thing you actually end up doing, takes you in the direction of your goals, your needs, and your values.
Right. And I think that can be a big breakthrough with the male presenting clients that you're talking about, that come when their partners are like, I'm gonna leave you if you don't get this figured out. Because it's like, okay, what are your goals, needs, and values? Like, do you value this relationship? Yes. Okay, well, if you keep going down the path that you're going, uh, with getting into random fights with people and yelling and screaming and kicking and punching holes through walls, you're not gonna you're not gonna continue with this relationship. You're gonna lose something that's really important to you. So, like, let's make sure that we're like, we can feel the feelings of anger, but that doesn't mean we have to. It has to totally envelop us, and we can choose what behaviors we want to do next that are in the direction of our goals, needs, and values.
Absolutely. That old adage from AA, you're not responsible for your first thought. You are responsible for your second thought and your first action. So whatever that behavioral output is, you do have to take accountability for that. And you do need to guide that toward your goals, your needs, and your values, the things that you really claim to care about.
Right. And I really like that. I use that phrase all of the time with clients. Because yeah, I think so often, like, I'll hear phrases like, well, I was so angry, like I couldn't control it. Like I don't know. Like I don't know how I ended up there. Like it just, like, next thing I knew, I was punching the guy. Like, I couldn't help it. I couldn't control it. It's like, is that really truly true? Like, did you have no like control in the situation? Did you have no?
Why did you stop at punching him? Why didn't you go further? Why didn't you assault him even further and maybe even cause like mortal injury or something of that nature? You'd say, well, I didn't want to kill him. Oh, so you did have control.
Yeah, there was a line for you.
And
Just
you held it intentionally and thoughtfully.
yeah. And that could be a hard pill to swallow. It's like, oh, okay, so my line wasn't punching the guy. Like, okay.
And I chose that thoughtfully and intentionally and on purpose.
Yeah.
And you might even say, well, you hit that guy when he said that thing. Would you hit your brother? You'd be like, no. Why? Because he's my brother. Oh, so you did have control. You
Yeah.
chose.
Right. Right. So it's not an excuse.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Are there any other thoughts that you have in the way of anger and how you might work with a client through processing that emotion?
Yeah, so one of my hacks for therapy is whatever somebody is good at, I teach them the opposite. Not because the other is better, it's just unexplored. And there's room for growth in the things that we've yet to explore. So if somebody has a penchant for anger, then often we're trying to help them to experience the other emotions or understand the underlying thought processes and challenge those in the opposite direction. So if anger is a sense of or a if anger manifests because of some thoughts around injustice, I might challenge some of those injustices because maybe not all of them are actual injustices, and I might explore with them their own contribution to whatever the situation is and aim much more towards internalization rather than externalization.
Uh-huh.
Alternatively, if somebody tends to self-blame and self-criticize, any disagreement with anyone is my fault and I did it wrong,
Yeah.
I'm going to teach them how to blame other people. I'm going to work with them on, like, you got to see what they contributed here. Tell me how they are the asshole. Not because they are the asshole. The truth is in the middle in all of these things, or almost all of these things. But I need to show you the thing that you don't tend to do, just because you need to see what's on the other side and practice what's on the other side. So if somebody tends to internalize, teach them to externalize. Or if you yourself tend to internalize, then practice in your own mind externalizing. How are they the problem? And then if they tend to externalize, then you practice the internalization. What am I contributing to this?
Yeah. No, I think that's so smart. Yeah. If I have a client that's just, if we are trying to work on labeling emotions and all this client can say is, well, I'm just angry. Well, I'm frustrated. Uh, I'm pissed off. And that's all that they can like identify. I would really work on with them on like, okay, I'm going to pull out our big emotion word master shit, not master sheet, and we're gonna go through and like maybe we would uncover together some of the shame or the blame or the guilt, uh, the loneliness, those sorts of things. If I have a client that like is feeling anger is so foreign to them and all they can do is feel shame and feel internalized blame, then yeah, let's work on like expressing some of like the anger towards whoever else is in this situation that they're describing. Uh, yeah, and I think maybe people would be surprised that like we sometimes like we want the anger to come up and we want to like foster that anger in the client. Because again, I think like the general zeitgeist is like, oh, anger is a bad emotion.
Right.
It's not. It's an emotion that is we all experience. uh, yeah.
Absolutely. I think you make a ton of really good points there. The two that I want to really build off of is the idea of using emotion to work with emotion,
Yeah.
um, and healthy expressions of anger. So let's make sure to get to those two things. One,
Okay.
the idea of get emotion in the room and use it actively in session. There's kind of a difference between intellectualizing and talking about the thing, versus much more having an experience of it in session, much more in vivo, much more experiential. And I think it's a difficult thing to teach, especially therapists, to do, because you decide to be a therapist, you want to help people. We immediately start throwing books and assignments at you. And so we start being very conceptual about it. Hell, Ellie, you and I right here, right now, are doing exactly that thing. We're meta-analyzing these things, which means that it can be quite difficult for clinicians to really have a practiced hand at how to live within it in a session. And then alternatively, there's a lot of how do I want to say? There's a lot of I guess, or mores around the way that a therapy session should look that I
Yeah.
do think fails to address that kind of hyper aggressive, hyper masculine guy energy that can show up. When I'm trying to work in vivo with these patterns of anger with a male identified client, it is very much my goal to have them get angry at me in session. It's very much part of the process that we're going to get in a fight, and that's valuable. It scares the shit out of so many early career clinicians. But one, that's the language that they understand. Two, that's the emotion they're working on. I'm here to try to provide a corrective emotional experience. I'm going to show you what healthy anger looks like. So, yeah, we're going to get in a fight, maybe multiple fights, multiple times. And every single time that happens, I'm going to try to show up as healthy as I possibly can. And I'm also going to try to work with you around shaping your anger to still be pro-social and pro-relational. This is really not the stuff about like having the anger in the room. Two parts here. Um, Having the emotion in the room and really working with it and using emotion to work with emotion, that's less Greenberg stuff. But this idea of and so we're going to get in a fight. I think that's much more kind of my stuff. I'm not sure who else is doing it. Well, that's not true. The people from REBT, and I've seen some other therapists / maybe even Fritz Perls on some level, would be very comfortable with conflict in session.
Yeah.
But yeah, Les Greenberg was all about that idea of get the emotion in the room and really experience it right here, whatever it is.
Yeah. Because, like, that's the thing that needs to be worked on. Like, we can sit here, we could talk about the angry episode that you had 2 days ago, and, like, or we can have the anger in the room with us right now so we can actually, like, it's actually so eye-opening as a therapist to see what exactly is going on with the client, like right here, right now, in a moment. So we're like, oh, okay, this
What
is
is that
what's
process?
yeah, this is what's happening when I'm not there. Like, now I see
Exactly.
it. Um, Absolutely, 100%. Um, and then your second point on healthy expression of anger.
Yeah, well, let me toss back to you. How can we express anger in a healthy way? What is an okay way to express anger, maybe even toward or at another person?
Oh God, it's so hard, but I think at or toward another person, I don't know. My first thought is, again, making sure that we're not being reactive. We're being intentional with like what we want to say to this person. So maybe we're not having a conversation with this person when we're at a 10 at the 1 through 10 scale of being angry, because I don't think at that point anything that comes out of our mouth is going to be intentional and responsive.
Yep.
And I don't know, coming to the person in a vulnerable way and telling them how we do feel hurt in this situation. Um, and again, we've talked about like trying not to use these like finger pointy emotion words um, to express that. Like, I feel attacked. Um, that implies that that person is doing the attacking, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. Um, in some way, trying to have a conversation with that person in a way that doesn't feel like you're attacking the other person. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. I think primarily you need to talk about yourself and you need to have a plan. You haven't planned if you're still at a 10. So I think it's okay to state that you are angry. I think it is okay to state the circumstances around your anger,
Yeah.
but you don't want to be narrativizing about what the other person is doing because they might not agree. Um, and then that's likely to get them defensive, and we start litigating the facts instead of talking about the emotional experience. So it needs to be self-focused. What I'm experiencing, um, the narrative that I have in my own head about what's happening. And I don't think that you need to be, completely stoic or very calm necessarily,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, um, in most circumstances, you do want to contain and present it in a way that actually really works for others. And I got one caveat.
Okay.
At a certain point, when boundaries are just not being met,
Yeah.
and or respected, I should say, um, after you've tried a lot of the calmer and more pro-social approaches, sometimes it is okay to just make clear this is not okay and you need to stop. Like, it's okay to have a very hard, very assertive, maybe even a little aggressive boundary, but you do that way later when you're out of all other options. And I would consider exiting the situation first. Sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
But also, I think what I just outlined is the process by which a group slash populace may begin to push back against systemic injustices. Eventually, playing nice ain't an option anymore. But notice the eventually. We got to try some of the other stuff first, typically. Um, and most of our relationships and most of our circumstances are not those systemic injustices. Often, if we're quick to view them as that, it's often indicative of other systemic injustices we experienced elsewhere in our lives that are now getting projected onto this situation.
Ooh. Yeah, I like the it's something I think it's a DBT uh thing um that I learned from Andrea, but it was like, okay, when you're about to have a conversation with this person, what what do you want to get out of this conversation? Do you want um to maintain the relationship? Is that your main goal? Do you want to get your point across? Is that your main goal? Or is it to like, I think like keep your integrity?
Mm,
And those like depending on which is most important to you in this conversation, that's a different way of going about the conversation. uh, but I thought that was a really interesting way to like know, okay, like yes, I'm angry with this person, but if my intention is to maintain the relationship, then maybe I shouldn't go into this conversation calling them an asshole every 5 seconds, you know.
exactly.
So
Align your actions with your goals, needs, and values. That's responsiveness.
yeah. Oh, this has been such a rich conversation, and I feel like uh, really helpful for listeners. I hope everyone found value in it, and I hope I didn't sniffle too much through.
I'm not going to edit them out because we accept you. And like, why would we judge you? You're here working for us, taking care of us when you're not feeling well. So we're not going to shun your sniffles. We're going to accept them.
Thank you. It's human. It's real.
Yeah.
All right. Our new quote for today: "Dreams don't got timelines." I pointed out to Adam. I was like, "That is not the best English, but okay."
Hey, can I rant about something really quickly?
Sure.
So there is such a posturing of proper English language in um in so many, I think, especially educated circles
Yeah.
especially in the US and probably in the UK too, um, that misses a lot of cultural nuance and really linguistic history. What's so fascinating about languages is that what we write and the broad rules that we make is not the way that people actually speak, one. And two, it I think the typical line is that we need to follow the rules so that everybody's clear on the meaning. But again, it's not the primary way that people do communicate. And many times following the rules doesn't actually necessarily translate into good communication. 3, there's a lot of cultural nuance to playing with language in creative ways. And 4, those kinds of cultural shifts are the basis of new language formation. So it's really interesting to dig into the history of language development over time, because many of the things that we claim need to be a particular way were us deciding to stop following previous rules or take certain shortcuts, to now arrive at a thing that we've just decided is now a rule. We're making the whole thing up. And you can read the histories here. There are certain situations in which Latin scholars are condemning the, bastardized Latin speak of the young bucks in their society. It's like, that's what became French, a language we would now call a beautiful language. Our youth in society today are ever changing the language on a daily basis, and that is cultural development. And then there are entire kind of language sets like Black English vernacular in particular that have real features, rather than them being the way that like a standard academic would treat Black English vernacular if written on the page is, oh, that's wrong. It's just condemning an entire people's way of speaking that's actually got really neat language features in it that we don't have, that are actually really useful. So um, we condemn language too recklessly, and the rules don't matter, and nobody actually has written them down anywhere.
Well,
There is
Adam,
no English. Sorry, I'm not done. uh, there is no like English language committee somewhere that signs off on all the changes.
well, if you were trying to own me, I think you did. And
I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to.
you're like, Allie, let me get you right now.
I'm sorry. I might edit that out. I don't know.
No, it's fine. That was my AP English. I was an AP English kid. That was that was what was that coming out. Um, um, okay, but I really like the quote, what it is saying. Dreams don't got timelines. I've heard you say like, yeah, for some of our like big life goals, like you can spend your whole life working towards them as long as you're working towards them. It's like you can be 100 and still be working towards that thing, still be finishing that book, uh, you know, still be like, I don't know, experiencing something that you've always wanted to experience while you were here on this earth. And yeah, I think like as long as you're still working towards it, who's to say it has like a certain timeline?
And so much of the pressure we feel with respect to completing these goals, which is a language that I will always challenge, is the timeline that we've created for it. That's not necessary. You want to work on it, work on it. You're close to having it finished, try to get it across the line. You're done working on it, you want to focus on something else, that's fine. This goal doesn't necessarily go away. You have the right to pick it back up and pursue it again at some point in the future.
Yeah, I love that. It's never too late. And you have this like one beautiful life to live. Well, depending on what you believe spiritually, but
Sure.
and so do what you want with it
Yeah.
and never say like I can't, it's too late.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I love it. All right, Adam, this has been such a great episode and I need to like really blow my nose. So, uh we're going to sign off for today. Again, if you're interested in our services, reach out for a free consultation at delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. And we're coming out with really awesome blog posts every single week at delvepsych.substack.com. Check it out.
Thank you so much for taking care of us in the way that you did today, Allie. And please go take care of yourself.
Thanks. I will.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.